Everyone. Good day and welcome to the webinar on bilateral and synergistic opportunities between Qatar and Sri Lanka, organized by Doha Bank. I warmly welcome all honorable speakers at today's event, representing the key strategic institutions in Sri Lanka, Dr. Sita Raman, Group CEO of Doha Bank, and all distinguished guests joining this meeting today. Please let me introduce myself. I'm Eranda Virakon, the Chief Representative Officer for Doha Bank, Sri Lanka. Doha Bank is a leading bank in Qatar, having successful operations in 18 countries in the global space. We have a strong relationship with Sri Lanka and always work towards the mutual benefit of both countries. Today's webinar on bilateral and synergetic opportunities between Qatar and Sri Lanka is much important and appropriate topic for both countries in this present economic climate to explore each country's development strategies. I wish to give a quick overview about Qatar. And it is comparatively a small country in the Gulf region, having a land area around 11,600 square kilometers, which is approximately about 20% of Sri Lanka's geographical extent. Qatar is one of the fastest growing economies in the Gulf region, blessed with strong gas reserves, which have an estimated lifespan of about 130 years. Currently, the country supplies 1/3 of the global LNG requirement. The size of Qatar's GDP is around $190 billion, primarily driven by the energetic-related products. All international rating agencies have recently upgraded Qatar to AA- rating with a stable outlook. Qatar's economic visionary plan for 2030 aims to reduce the country's reliance on hydrocarbon exports and to promote non-oil sectors such as healthcare, technology, manufacturing, education, and services, etc. Qatar and Sri Lanka have established a very good relationship over the past years, and we believe the bilateral relationship is now getting much stronger with the establishment of Doha Bank's representative office in Colombo in Sri Lanka since 2018. Total merchandise trade, including exports and imports, between Qatar and Sri Lanka was around $56 million in 2019. And with this webinar, Doha Bank wishes to explore the opportunities between two countries further. Today, we are honored and privileged of having a representation from key strategic institutions in Sri Lanka. Firstly, Mrs. Chitranjali Disanayake, the Director General Export Development Board in Sri Lanka, and she will present Sri Lanka's export strategy and the initiatives taken to develop the trade corridor between Qatar and Sri Lanka. Then Mr. Sanjay Mohotala, the Director General Board of Investment Sri Lanka, will explain country's vision towards investment and opportunities. On behalf of Central Bank of Sri Lanka, we have invited Dr. Chandranath Tamasekara and Dr. M. Azim to give an overview about Sri Lanka's macroeconomic outlook, the country's overall strategy in driving the economy by facing these COVID-19 challenges, the reserve position and the sovereign debt management, etc. Dr. Sita Raman, the Group CEO of Doha Bank, will present and share more information from Doha Bank perspective, including how Qatar is steering the economy with these present COVID-19 challenges, the potential opportunities between two countries, and the role of Doha Bank, the only representation in Sri Lanka to the Gulf region. Well, we will now hand over the floor to the speakers, and please let me introduce my CEO, Group CEO, Dr. Sita Raman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Randa. What a joy to be integral part of the interesting combination of people. I mean, Sri Lanka is a great country of substance. Our representative office has been a professional intermediary to support the bilateral opportunities in terms of trade or investment, banking, and finance. We live in a changing world. Extraordinary set of changes and challenges are happening. A new world order is throwing enormous opportunities as well. While we recognize the risk in terms of human governance, economic governance, environment governance, and social risk management, we need to move from disaster recovery to business continuity. We also see the synergistic opportunities between country to country. With this perspective in mind, we have aligned today a prolific line of speakers: the Sri Lankan Central Bank representatives, Investment Board, Export Promotion Board. Our experience in terms of Sri Lanka has been very professional, prolific in terms of hospitality as well as professionalism. And we want to support the mission of Sri Lanka Vision 2025 in pursuit of that goal. We have aligned the speakers, but we are slightly changing the sequence today. The central bankers have their own priorities. They have their treasury meetings lined up. So I requested Madam Chitranjali as well as Sanjaya to accommodate. First, I'm going to invite Dr. Chandranath Amarasekara, Director, Economic Research Department, Central Bank of Sri Lanka, to address our webinar. Over to you, Dr. Chandranath.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sitharaman. Please give me a second till I share my screen with all of you. So thank you very much once again, Doha Bank and Dr. Sitharaman, as well as Eranda, for inviting us for this seminar. And I noticed that the participation is absolutely fantastic. So the task I have is to give you a brief background as to what's going on in the Sri Lankan macroeconomy today. And without much ado, let me get to my slides. So we know how bleak the global economic picture is. So if I made the same presentation a month ago, the global number of cases of COVID would have been 12 million, and it has increased within a month to 24 million. So almost doubled within a month, with several deaths, more than 800,000 deaths all over the world. But if you look at Sri Lanka, we have been fortunate that the country, the government has been able to contain the COVID crisis to a great extent. And up to now, we've only had, only had less than 3,000 cumulative cases, and only 140 people are in hospital due to COVID, and most of them are returnees from abroad. And only 12 deaths, as Dr. Sitharaman mentioned to us casually before this began. So the bottom line there is that the country has been able to contain the COVID situation with mainly people-centric policies. So it was people first, and then economy second. And if I show you some Google mobility charts, these are publicly available. You see that Sri Lanka situation has improved tremendously. It has we have seen normalcy return into economic activities compared to what we had before the Sri Lankan lockdown that was there from mid-March to mid-May. So we are back to normalcy with regard to the people's movements across the country. And if you compare the Sri Lankan situation with the situation of most other countries, particularly our neighbors, if you take India, if you compare Sri Lanka with India, what you see with the red lines, that's Sri Lanka, and the gray lines, that's India. And you see the impact of the lockdown was sharper in Sri Lanka, but then there has been a rapid normalization of economic activity. That's what these charts show. If you take the other non-conventional indicators such as expressway traffic, air pollution, stock market developments, and broadband data usage, you see the normalcy returning. Air pollution, of course, I mean, that's not a positive thing. And what we see at the beginning of the year with very high levels of pollution is not due to Sri Lankan economic activities, but because of some impact coming from India. But now things have normalized, And even during the lockdown, from what you see with broadband data usage data, is that people have been continuing to work from home as well. So all this has been possible with coordinated action by the government through fiscal policies, through health sector policies, to border control policies, as well as monetary and financial sector regulation. From the central bank side, we have been continuously easing monetary policy starting from the 30th of January. Sri Lanka's central bank has been recognized by global media as one of the first countries to respond to the imminent threats from COVID. So we have been reducing policy interest rates. We have been providing liquidity to the market through various regulatory adjustments. And we have even prepared lender of last resort facilities should a need arises. And thus far, I'm pleased to say that no such need has been seen. And we have also provided non-conventional support to COVID-hit businesses through credit guarantee schemes and subsidized interest rates. And with these, what we have seen in the domestic market is that domestic interest rates have been on a declining trend, and the deposit interest rates and lending interest rates, as well as the interest rates on government securities, I'm sure Dr. Azim, my colleague, will talk about this. They have reduced sharply over the past 4-5 months. Looking at the economy, again, I'm sure my colleague from the Export Development Board will talk about these developments. If you take exports have seen a V-shaped recovery. We have provisional data for July, and we are back to, or even better, we are doing even better than what we saw before COVID with regard to our exports. With regard to imports, there has been a decline in imports, but this was mostly driven by the restrictions that we have placed on imports on a temporary basis, so that our balance of payments remain strong. And at the same time, we have benefited by reduced global oil prices as well. So right now we are seeing a very narrow trade deficit, and exports are doing well, as I said earlier, and domestic production is improving for both exports as well as for import substitution. And I'm sure Sanjay will talk in a bit about the game changers or winning industries. And if you look at the Sri Lankan economy, if you look at the structure of the Sri Lankan economy, if you look at the way the government has structured the ministries, the new ministries after the elections, you see that they are all geared towards improving domestic production for both import substitution as well as export. And I've listed several possible winning industries, non-conventional industries that Sri Lanka could be looking at going forward. Looking at workers' remittances. So workers' remittances, that's a huge chunk of our foreign earnings. Every year we get about $7 billion in workers' remittances, mainly from the Middle East, but from the other regions of the globe as well. And we have seen workers' remittances also normalizing after a dip in March, April, May. And in fact, the June workers' remittances have actually increased year on year. But we think overall during this year, there will be a drop of workers' remittances about 15%. Tourist arrivals, of course, I mean, that's the tourism sector is the most affected sector in the economy. It actually went through twin shocks. In 2019, we had the Easter Sunday attacks that affected the tourism sector to a great extent, as you see from the light blue lines here. But the tourism sector was recovering very fast, and by the end of 2019, it was back to normal. And then came the COVID crisis, and we see some uncertainty there. And at the moment, for survival, the domestic tourism industry is depending on the tourism industry is depending on domestic tourists while getting ready for the potential that it would have in future. So again, we have received, with regard to tourism, we have received the Safe Travel stamp with performance in relation to COVID, and we are ready to welcome the tourists that would come hopefully in the near future. So with these external sector developments, and the political stability that we have seen in the recent past, we have been doing well with the exchange rate as well. So by the middle of April, the rupee, Sri Lankan rupee, depreciated sharply by about 10% against the US dollar. But since then, it has appreciated, and now it has stabilized at about 185 rupees a dollar. And with regard to the official reserves also, there was a dip during the month of April and March with some outflows that SPD will be talking about. But since then, there has been a build-up of reserves with coordinated action. And now, by the end of July, we had US dollars 7.1 billion of reserves, and since then it has improved, and that provides us a import cover of about 4.7 months, and we are in a comfortable position to meet all imminent debt obligations falling due during this year as well as the beginning of next year. These are PET slide on inflation. So domestic inflation has been contained, well contained in mid-single-digit levels. And although we are supporting the government at the moment with their government security issuances, we see no threat coming from, coming from the demand side on inflation. And we are confident that inflation will be maintained at mid-single-digit levels throughout. And that will be supported by proactive policy measures. And one reason why inflation is low is because the dismal economic performance that we have seen over the past few years. And even in 2020, we thought that there would be a recovery, but unfortunately, we are not going to see that recovery in the. If you take the year as a whole, in the first quarter of the year, we have seen the growth, the economy contracting by 1.6%. That was a bit unexpected. We think that figure of 1.6% contraction is due to some measurement errors due to COVID-related issues that the country has seen. But over the quarters, by the fourth quarter, we expect a rapid acceleration of economic activity, domestic economic activity. And by next year, we should get back to our projected path of economic growth as well. And this is the last published business confidence index, the LMD Nielsen's business confidence index. We see a peak in business confidence immediately after the presidential elections. And since then, because of COVID, there was a dip, but we see a gradual recovery from that. And we are confident that this upward trend will continue. And if you look at the two pie charts, what you see is that these also from the same business confidence survey. And there are two questions asked from businesses. You expect the economy in the next 12 months to improve, get worse, stay the same, 44% improve. And the second question is, you expect the company's business in the next 12 months to get better, get worse, stay the same. And about 70% responses for get better, which signals where the economy is headed. And We think that several prerequisites to achieve high and sustainable economic growth have been fulfilled. The stable political environment, supportive interest rates and credit availability, low and stable inflation, low tax regime, untapped potential for investment, and improved infrastructure and strategic location. Sorry. All these are now in place, and we are ready for business, if I summarize that in short. And looking at the president's, His Excellency the President's vision and the macroeconomic targets given there, they are quite comfortable to see, although there will be some delay in getting towards these macroeconomic targets of achieving, maintaining an average economic growth of 6.5%. Per capita income exceeding $6,500 from today's $4,000, maintaining unemployment at less than 4%, inflation being maintained at 5%, budget deficit less than 4%, and maintaining a single-digit interest rate and maintaining a stable exchange rate. When you look at all these, we think that in spite of the short-term deviations from those targets, we are confident that Sri Lanka would be able to take the next leap forward in becoming the model economy in Asia. So with that, let me stop and pass on the baton. Thank you.
Well done, Dr. Chandranath. What a fine credentials you presented as such. I think you summed it up in terms of COVID. It's an extraordinary healthcare program. You must be running it. Otherwise, at least in terms of mortality and the overall number of cases also has been bare minimum compared to the global explosion. In terms of economics, the underlying fundamentals are strong, and you have a considered vision 2025, and you have inflation you have outlined, you have financial stability, you have reserves of 7.1 billion plus. Even though there were deceleration in terms of currency, brought to stability now. I think it's an opportunity from a Gulf perspective. That's what I look at it. I mean, we do have expatriates from Sri Lanka living in the Gulf. Qatar itself is hosting around 150,000. We're seeing reflections in Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, Saudi Arabia, UAE. In fact, we do have branches in Kuwait and UAE. We will promote the Sri Lankan SMEs and corporates, and we'll also share this information, disseminate to our key relationship to showcase the fundamentals and see how best we can add value. I have got only one question. Looking at your presentations now, what sort of, you outlined clearly a 2025 considered vision. I mean, that's prolific in terms of leadership. Now, what realignment or changes needed on account of this stagnation, COVID stagnation? Specifics, any reforms are required to make it happen?
Right. So the presidential elections were held at the end of last year, and we just completed our general elections. So now we have a new parliament, and the government has they have now they have a new cabinet, and they have lined up several state ministries as well. And it is very interesting to see that these state ministers in particular have been given specific tasks. Even the titles of those state ministries could be quite strange for whoever who's not familiar with the Sri Lankan setup. But when you see it, you see that domestic production is what is being envisaged as the way forward. And we hope that because of COVID, the situation that has been created globally because of COVID, it will sort of provide us the very strong situation with regard to what we can do going forward. With regard to reforms also, we have a very strong government now, and it is a reform-oriented government, and it is a people-centric government, and we think that we are confident that the government, it is this government that will be able to implement the much necessary, the essential reforms that the country needs to move towards becoming a higher income economy. Thank you.
Good. There's a very many flow of questions. For want of time, I'm not going to read out. We will send you these questions perhaps. We'll mail it back. Flow of questions are because since we are on Facebook, and I think I could see almost 7 or 8 questions already hanging around. Let me move on to the next speaker. Thank you, Dr. Chandranath. Let me move on to Dr. Mohammed S.M. Azim, a Superintendent and Registrar, Public Debt Department, Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Over to you, sir. Dr. Mohammed.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sita Raman. My fellow panelists and participants, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, it's a pleasure to linking up with you to highlight some of the developments that we are seeing in Sri Lanka, and of course the relationship between Qatar and a greater GCC community, and the opportunities that the country presents now in terms of engaging in terms of the economic recovery that we are seeing in the country, and also benefiting all these stakeholders. And my colleague Chandranath has taken you through the kind of basic parameters and the developments and the political stability that we have seen, and the clarity and the decisiveness in which the decisions to be made going forward with much more sharper focus now being placed on some of our activities. But what I have to say, as discussed by Chandranath, Sri Lanka has been faster. Sri Lanka has seen a faster recovery than many of its regional peers in both economic activity and mobility. The Colombo port is functioning very much as usual, and many facets and changes in the way of conducting business engagements by many of our business leaders. For instance, enhanced air cargo handling by our ports, and the hoteliers who are mainly affected by twin impacts starting from April 2019. They have catering to much more focused F&B strategies and event management and busy domestic tourism, all contributing to much more normalcy in economic activities in the country. But my focus today in terms of intervention is to elaborate on Sri Lanka's debt dynamics, our debt obligation in the near term, and also some possible financing options. I'm not sharing some of these slides that we used to share simply because the much more detailed clarity would be available with the Wharton account that should be presented to the Parliament tomorrow and day after, 27th and 28th, and also the annual budget that would come towards latter part of this year with a medium-term focus. So because of that reason, I'll keep broader directions being highlighted rather than getting into nitty-gritties that would be freely available in the central bank website and direct dialogue that you all can establish with some of us continuously. And what we have seen in terms of the developments, like most other frontier and emerging market economies, Sri Lanka to face challenging market circumstances, conditions throughout 2020. And of course, since November 2019, that was the president election, we have seen greater political stability. And the political stability was further strengthened with the general election just concluded. And Sri Lanka seen that its timely debt servicing obligations being honored all throughout by maintaining its unblemished debt servicing record. And also we have raised substantive volumes of finances, particularly from domestic market in recent months. And also we maintain some of our foreign currency financing opportunities and options also available, and raised reasonable volumes in the last 6 months or so. And of course, as Chandranath highlighted, interest rates have declined. Interest rates have declined to very much of historically low levels in recent months. And also this has enabled substantive saving in the government's budget in terms of new contracts that the government has entered with domestic financing particularly. And also we see some spike in terms of government of Sri Lanka's international sovereign bond secondary market yield rates, particularly towards election times and at the height of COVID developments all throughout the world. And I can just highlight a small chart here. You can see here, it shows the spikes during that period. But what we are simply seeing is that all heading south in recent months. And it has come back to very much the levels, single digit levels, but still we see substantive space available in terms of financing cost further coming down in coming months. And at the same time, conducive and supportive policy environment in terms of interest rates and liquidity levels have contributed to substantive volumes of finances being easily raised by the government in the last few months that we were seeing. And the country's financial markets were operative all throughout. Although there were restrictions and also sometimes lockdowns, the country's financial markets were fully operational in terms of BCP arrangements and also with continuous facilitation for economic activities. And also the financial intermediaries, particularly the banks, the government and the central bank continuously encourage them in terms of enhancing their credit lines with their regional counterparts. We believe such facilitations would enable them to have much more resources for economic activities here, as well as opening up opportunities of investments for regional counterparts by investing in sovereign papers, foreign currency denominated, rupee denominated, as well as their business interests. And we see the space available and the opportunities available. And the banks, they lead often with their counterparts in the Middle East and also with other regions. And that would further facilitate going forward in terms of financing options. So to get into a few more details in terms of our debt obligations, particularly the near-term debt obligation, you see so far during 2020, first 8 months details, we have honored particularly the foreign liabilities, foreign debt service obligations of $2.5 billion. And for the remainder of this year, from September to December, we have about 2 billion foreign currency, foreign debt liabilities. But this includes one big ticket international sovereign bond maturity on October 4th. So the combination of interest and principal payments, about 3/4 of the remainder 2020's debt obligations are principal payments. And looking at 2021 information, we see we have about 4.3 billion in aggregate foreign debt obligations. And we see that another one big ticket, 1 billion ISP maturity, that's due in July 2021. So from that perspective, what we are simply seeing is our focus in recent months, particularly in 2020, is to see our financing arrangements more focused towards raising funds through official bilateral and multilateral financing arrangements, because to right through the volatilities that we have seen in international capital market. And also we looked at foreign currency term financing facilities. We have entered one in March with CDB for about $500 million with further enhancement option available. And we would look at it very closely in coming months. And also we have called for RFPs, and currently government is in evaluation stage in terms of another financing in terms of a foreign currency term financing facility. And also we look at much more clearer path in terms of domestic market foreign currency financing options, we have dollar-denominated Sri Lanka development bonds. The main investors in SLDB, Sri Lanka development bonds, are the foreign currency earners, particularly the exporters and other foreign currency earning sources in this country. And also at times that we have seen regional banks from Middle East as well as from East Asia also chipped in with substantive volumes. And also we see FCBU, foreign currency banking unit facilitation. This is where sometimes we have seen enhanced credit lines between their counterparts contributed in making finances at competitive rates in recent months and recent years for kind of a greater clarity. So we see these options would continue while we closely monitor the international capital market developments in terms of how best we can fit in our financing option towards latter part of this year and early part of next year. So we would keep a very close eye on international sovereign bond and how the emerging and frontier market yield curves develop. And also we look at non-conventional financing option from other currencies that also available. We have explored to great extent accessing some regional markets, and we see that option also available for us while we keep all the options that we have explored so far during 2020 being continued going into 2021. And also we see much more space available for us in terms of facilitating foreign investments in treasury bills and treasury bonds. We have a space close to $1.6 billion of foreign investments given the ceiling that we have established for internal management per se. But what we are simply seeing in recent months, as I have already highlighted, we had a very successful fundraising initiatives in terms of domestic market financing. We have seen we are expanding ATMs, we are bringing in cost of financing to historically low levels, and also we are strategically kind of earmarking the maturity buckets within the term structure to make our finances much more conducive in terms of our future debt management, risk consideration. This being said, I see government of Sri Lanka is also focusing with a much more clearer medium-term debt management strategy and a debt sustainability framework. The greater clarity in terms of these things would be discussed when we move into the annual budget with the medium-term fiscal framework. But what we are simply seeing is the clarity and the decisiveness in which that we wanted to move forward. And that is also the one element that we see would contribute to faster recovery, as Dr. Sitaraman was raising a question from Chandanath. And this would take Sri Lanka to achieve its potential in coming years, and also to see its macroeconomic fundamentals setting in a much more clearer path, and we'll be able to resume our general activities. Sri Lanka remain one of the regular international capital market participants, and we would be seeing that opportunities again building up in terms of global liquidity and also improved macroeconomic circumstances that we are envisaging. With that note, I'll stop at this point and would like to take if any further clarifications and questions there. Thank you.
Well then, Dr. Mohammed, you answered all the questions. In fact, Doha Bank was supporting the government debt subscriptions since 2004-05, those days, and the central bank representative used to do a roadshow. You're most welcome to come to Qatar, and if we can set up meetings for you to meet the institutional investors or banks, it's a privilege to do that. You summed it up very well in terms of your debt servicing capacity and obligations and financing arrangements. Do you foresee any major challenges on debt in the near term because of the current changing dynamics?
Yes. Yes, in fact, that's a very good question. And thank you very much, Dr. Sitaraman, as always. We really appreciate your continuous support in engaging with major institutional investors in Qatar and, of course, rest of GCC countries. And what we are simply seeing is some challenges in terms of frontier and emerging market economies. It's not necessarily only for Sri Lanka or for that matter, frontier market economies. We see that challenge in terms of accessing the capital market financing. But of course, as what we have seen in recent months, we have settled $500 million in April and another 1 billion now in October. It's in pipeline. We have built our capacities in terms of not only looking at some options that I highlighted in terms of official, bilateral, multilateral sources of finances, and also more of one-on-one arrangements in terms of syndicate, foreign currency term financing arrangement, but also we look at options much more of a liquidity management per se of soft facilities with our regional central bank as well as with multilateral agencies. So we will continue those options being explored very closely while seeing and evaluating all the developments in the global capital markets. But what we are simply seeing is Sri Lanka is a country, it's always envisaged that it will honor its obligations on a timely manner. And also we see that we have a substantive space in terms of raising funds from many sources as we have envisaged. So this would come and play a role. But yes, there are challenges. That's not only for a country like Sri Lanka, but generally across frontier and emerging market economies with current global economic circumstances.
You summed it up very well. There are so many questions for you. I don't want you to answer all the questions, but I'll just read out some of the questions. Perhaps it might interest you. What would be expected exchange rate at the year end? The one question has come. Another one is, what are the steps taken by the government to address the sovereign downgradings by international rating agencies? Third one is, can I have some light on the foreign investment policy for those who address this question? I'm going to answer. There is a gentleman, Mr. Sanjay Mahotala is going to address your questions, so wait for a while. The next question is, how do Sri Lankan organizations already set up in Qatar to promote their business interest using this forum? And that's what we are trying to do. Is a very strong relationship between G2G, and we want to make sure we will promote the bilateral trade or investments. Banking, of course, is a professional intermediary, and financing, we'll look at options. And there are so many questions. I think I should stop at this because you have your other commitment to move on. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you. Now let me move on to the next speaker, Madam Chitranjali Dissanayake, Director General, Sri Lanka Export Development Board. What is in store for export? We would like to listen to you, Madam.
Thank you, Dr. Sitaram. I would like to thank the Doha Bank for organizing this webinar, which is very timely, and also inviting Sri Lanka Export Development Board to share our views with you. So first of all, I must say that, as mentioned by Dr. Qatar and Sri Lanka has been having very cordial diplomatic ties for over 4 decades, and we have been working with Qatar very strongly and continuously to develop and strengthen these ties. So saying that, today my presentation will briefly touch on the export scenario of Sri Lanka, as well as a brief note on the national export strategy that we have developed and the future bilateral cooperation or the opportunities we have between the two countries. So I will now share my presentation. I hope you can see my the screen.
Yes.
Can you see my screen? Is it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So to start with, these are a few key indicators of Sri Lanka. I would not go to read it through because you can see it very clearly on the screen. So to touch on the trade statistics of Sri Lanka, these are our major exports and imports. Major export of Sri Lanka is the apparel sector, contributing 47% to the total export sector. And then followed by tea in bulk as well as in packets. Then of course we are famous for our tires and tubes, solid plates and industrials and surgical drugs, importing from the world petroleum oils, woven fabric, electrical and electronic products, and so on. So this is the growth of total merchandise trade of Sri Lanka, exports and import. This does not have services, only the merchandise. I will not go through the graph, it is very clear on the graph. And to touch on the key export destinations of Sri Lanka, the number one region for exports is EU region. We enjoy the GSP plus, EU GSP plus facility, and we have historical ties with EU, and most of our FDIs are from, some of our FDIs from EU region, followed very closely by USA. Again, we have GSP, US GSP, and we have a long-term trade connectivity with USA, and of course, the size of the market. Then followed by India, our closest neighbor, Japan, and the UAE. So just to touch on the role of the Export Development Board, where exports are concerned, the Sri Lanka Export Development Board is the country's apex trade organization, trade promotion organization, mandated by the legislation, and we act within a framework of 5 pillars, that is policy advice to the government on the national export development policies to create an enable environment. Then as a monitor, we monitor the performance and functions of the export sector. As a promoter in implementing product design and market development programs for the export sector, a facilitator, and the knowledge provider. So within these pillars, we also have our strategic objectives designed to suit our functions. And the major strategic objectives are 5 objectives we concentrate on. The number one is supporting the existing exporters, because they are the people who will bring the foreign exchange continuous to the country. So we concentrate on supporting them. Then of course, promote new exports from Sri Lanka to diversify the export basket, as diversified into new markets. We are now concentrating mainly on diversification of products as well as markets. And in this diversification efforts of markets, we concentrate, we consider the Middle Eastern region as a major region for us to concentrate on trade development. And I think that Qatar could play a very strategic role in this development. The next one is enhanced capacity building. This is especially for the SME sector, because we have to develop our SME sector and generate export-led foreign investment into the country, which I think Director General BOI will touch further on. A brief note on the national export strategy, which we developed in 2018 to make Sri Lanka an export hub driven by innovation and investment. In that strategy, we have identified 6 focus sectors. These are not the traditional sectors, these are the visionary sectors or upcoming sectors, and we concentrate mainly on in promoting and developing this sector. So one is the service sector, IT BPM sector. I will not go into details of explaining the sectors. Wellness tourism, Sri Lanka is a sought after tourism destination, and wellness tourism is a very niche product in that segment. So we are developing this segment and promoting the segment. Then the boating industry, of course, this involves boat manufacturing as well as boating activities, which is connected to the nautical tourism. Then electrical and electronic components, processed foods and beverages, and spices and concentrates. Spices and concentrates, I just want to say a few words on it. We have very unique spices in Sri Lanka, especially our Ceylon cinnamon. We have branded Ceylon cinnamon now, and we have got GI for Ceylon cinnamon. So we are all in the process of branding Ceylon spices as well. In addition to this, we have cross-sector functional, key functional areas, that is logistics, trade information and promotion, national quality infrastructure, innovation and entrepreneurship. Now I would like to play a very short video on the national export strategy. If you can. Hello.
Positioned at the crossroads of east-west trading routes, Sri Lanka is an economy in transition. A largely rural, agriculture-based economy in the past, with a skilled and expanding workforce, the country is now transforming itself to become a more advanced, knowledge-based economy. In 2016, the export sector consisted mainly of apparel, travel services, transport services, tea, spices, and rubber, with export of services being a key driver of economic growth. Growing steadily since 2010, Sri Lanka outperforms regional competitors in key industries, especially in services. With access to 2 billion consumers through bilateral free trade agreements with Qatar and Singapore, and trade concessions granted through the European Union GSP Plus and the US GSP, the country has ambitions to project itself as a prominent trade hub in South Asia and the Indian Ocean region, much like Singapore and Dubai in their respective regions. With its big aspirations, Sri Lanka has launched itself as a vital economic player in the region. While simultaneously building on the strength of traditional sectors, the country is diversifying its exports to increase competitiveness and resilience in global markets. Sri Lanka hopes to increase export revenue to $28 billion by 2022. The NES envisions Sri Lanka as an export hub driven by innovation and investment. Its main objectives are to create business-friendly, predictable and transparent policy and regulatory frameworks that support exports, to strengthen the market entry and compliance capacities of exporters, to become an efficient trade and logistics hub to facilitate exports, and to drive export diversification through innovation and the strengthening of emerging sectors. To create an enabling business environment for enterprises, the NES has focused on enhancing the country's performance in logistics, trade information and promotion, national quality infrastructure, and innovation and entrepreneurship. The NES is navigating the island nation to its rightful place in the Indian Ocean as an innovative, sophisticated, and dynamic trade hub, serving Asia and beyond.
I would now, coming back, I would like to touch on the bilateral trade with Qatar. Actually, if you look at the graph, you can see that our trade has not been that large because it's quite small right now, because we are exporting only 27 million US to Qatar, and we are importing for 37 million from Qatar. So Qatar is the 8th export destination in the Middle East and in the region, and 49th in the world. And also Qatar is the 7th import source to Sri Lanka in the Middle East region. So this is basically the present scenario of trade between the two countries. Then in trade, we talk about the export products. We have we mainly export agriculture products to Qatar, like bananas, lentils, and then of course tea packets are an important sector that goes into Qatar. Fruits and vegetables, coconut milk, etc. The imports consist of plastic products, petroleum oils, petroleum gases, aluminum, copper, wire, etc. This, I think, is something that I should like to talk about. These are the export opportunities that we think, that EDB think that we'll have with Qatar. We would like to strengthen our agriculture exports to Qatar, like fruits and vegetables, fishery products, bakery products, and coir products. Because we have organic agriculture products, we have sustainably sourced agriculture products, and certain agriculture products we have unique taste in those fruits and vegetables. And industrial products, we would like to promote apparel because as I told before, apparel is the major export sector of this Sri Lanka, and we are known in the world as quality producers and ethical producers of apparel, and we are not exporting that much of apparel to Qatar, so we'd like to explore the possibility of further improving this apparel exports to Qatar. Then the services is IT, tourism and construction. We have a highly skilled and professional workforce in Sri Lanka. Most of our companies are very innovative and creative, and we have a lower operating cost. Post-COVID, I think my colleague from Central Bank discussed this on a lengthy, very strongly. I would not go into details. As you know, Sri Lanka managed to mitigate COVID-19 impact successfully, and export bounced back. I mean, we had a deep dip in April 2020. Anyway, normally we have a small dip in our exports in April, but we managed to bounce back from May onwards, and we almost surpassed the July 2019 export figure and reaching $1 billion US.
Okay.
Then I would like to highlight a few points why Sri Lanka, why the world should look at Sri Lanka as an export destination or a trade hub. We have a strong and progressive economic policy with a globalized mindset, stable government with a strong focus on exports. We emphasize on higher value addition, importance of R&D and technology, and we work mostly on a public-private partnership model. We also concentrate on export-led investment initiatives. We have some specialized zones coming in this regard, like ITC, High Tech Park, Rubber City, Pharmaceutical Zone, etc. The Director General BOI will touch on these more, elaborate on these things. And we are our strategic location, of course, and we are a small country with high quality and reliable products, and we have access created through FTAs like the India Sri Lanka FTA, Pakistan Sri Lanka FTA, and the Sri Lanka Singapore FTA. Of course, other like APTA preferential access is also available for Sri Lankan products. The way forward, even though it's a very simple slide, this is the one we should concentrate on. We would like to see our exports growing from 27 million US in 2019 to at least about 50 million in 2025. We'd like to look at opportunities to promote our next sectors, and also work closely with the Sri Lankan Embassy in Qatar to strengthen bilateral trade between the two countries, joint venture opportunities with Qatar and mutual benefiting industries, and would like to work very closely with the bank, Doha Bank, in actively promoting bilateral trade relationships between Qatar and Sri Lanka. So that ends my presentation. Before concluding, I would like to once again thank Dr. Sitaraman and the Doha Bank for inviting us to share our thoughts. And if anybody wants to contact these are the contact details, and I have shared my contact details with the Doha Bank. So if anybody wants to contact, they could contact us through that, and we will be happy to assist them. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chitranjali. It was a fine presentation. And are you planning to sign FTA with the Gulf states as well? I've seen a few of the countries you have done. Are you planning?
Right, it's in the pipeline, but not yet. We have not really commenced doing any work on it, but we are looking at the possibility. Yeah.
In fact, a couple of years before, I had the opportunity to meet your previous president, and we discussed this option. And definitely, the Minister of Commerce is an ex-banker as well. So we will support your mission, whatever the way we can add value. The number is achievable. And with me, your cross-border relationship is very, very important. Let us look at one by one. I have Peter. He is from China, the Doha Bank Chinese representative. He's there. How do we promote the bilateral trade between Sri Lanka and China further, Peter? What's the current level of activity? How do we promote further? Where do you see the opportunities?
Okay. So regarding the bilateral relationship between the two countries, so for the time being, as per market news, we know that there are about 90 Chinese companies in Sri Lanka. So the key one are being Huawei, ECT, and in fact, I remember that about 2 years ago we have the opening ceremony in our Sri Lanka rep office. So some of these key companies also attend the opening ceremony in our Sri Lanka rep office. And then for the bilateral trade, so the annual volume is around US dollar around 4 to 5 billion per year. So basically, because our bank has approved limit to most top tier FI, I mean the Chinese FI and also the Sri Lankan FI. So basically, we could play a role to further facilitate the trade transactions by buying this top tier FI risk in the market.
Okay. And what is the existing level of trade, bilateral trade between China and Sri Lanka now? Do you have the numbers?
Yeah. The annual volume is around 4 to 5 billion US dollar.
Okay. That's significant as such, and it's a growing relationship. Okay, let me move on. Trade and investments we have to promote. It's not bilateral. We look at it. We look at multilateral relationship. Wherever Doha Bank is there, we are trying to connect. And we also have a Bangladesh representative, Ajay. How is it going between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh?
Thank you, sir. In fact, good afternoon, everybody. Bangladesh has a very good bilateral trade relationship with Sri Lanka. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
In fact, Bangladesh has a very good bilateral trade relationship with Sri Lanka for a long time. And from Bangladesh, actually, we mainly export pharmaceuticals and garments items and other items as well. And we also import various items from the Sri Lanka. And in fact, in order to facilitate the trade from Doha Bank side, we are accommodating import LCs for LPG mixtures from Sri Lanka, where our role is to add our confirmation and to discount the bills and to pay the beneficiary bank on site basis. So far, we haven't faced any issue from our side. And actually, we have been continuously trying to improve our service areas to offer the faster and unified services.
Okay.
And if you have any queries related to Bangladeshi banks or any trade, please feel free to contact us. Thank you all.
Sure. Madam is also looking at all the options. We will facilitate whichever we can. You treat it as a extension of your commercial attaché. So to support the trade or investments, we are here to look at multilateral opportunity. How about India? That's significant, I believe. Manish Mathur, are you joining?
Yes, I'm in, sir. I'm in, yeah.
How is the India-Sri Lanka bilateral relationship? What's the volume? How do we promote?
Yeah. So I think India is probably one of the largest partners for Sri Lanka currently. We did about $4.6 billion of trade with Sri Lanka in 2019. And it is both ways. And I think the good thing about Indian exports to Sri Lanka also is that we have an FTA with Sri Lanka already. But most of the exports are actually of goods which are outside the FTA as well. So Indian products are reasonably competitive in the Sri Lankan market. I think there's a lot of investment also that has happened by Indian companies into Sri Lanka. So Indian Oil has invested into petroleum retail. You have Bharti, which is operating on the telecom side. Then a lot of companies operating in the hotel side. So Taj has a hotel in Sri Lanka as well. And then there are companies in the banking side which have done investments. So I think SBI, if I remember correctly, is one of the investors in one of the Sri Lankan banks. And I think I think there's been reciprocal investments from Sri Lanka, in the textile side. So there is MAS Holdings, which is invested in Chennai, around Chennai. And there is Brandex, which is there. Then other companies, LTL Holdings, Danizo. And I think there are a couple of companies in the freight sector as well, which have done investments in the Indian market. From our perspective, so I think we have been quite active on the trade in the corridor. So we do a number of transactions with Bangladesh as well as Sri Lanka and Nepal. So we can support on the imports that happen, from India from Sri Lanka, as well as any exports from India into Sri Lanka. So we have appetite on Sri Lankan banks. So we can actually do confirmations or discounting as may be required. And on the other side, we also do a lot of syndication transactions. If there are any Sri Lankan banks want to sell off their exposures, that's again something which we'll be very keen to support, given our appetite on Sri Lanka risk. So that's something which we can do actively. I think just in terms of what we can probably do more is that obviously on the regional side, I think there is this SARC, which is a government body, which is a multi-government body. I think that's something which we should probably leverage more to build relationship amongst the countries in the region. So I think that's something which I think on a broader scale, not really for the bank necessarily, but from a government scale, I think that's something that we can probably do.
Good. How about Qatar, Andre? You're there. Madam was telling it's only 27 million today. He's targeting 50 million. The port strategy is clear, especially the food security Qatar needs. How do we promote the trade as well as investments between Sri Lanka and Qatar? Andre is my head of international banking.
Yeah, everybody. Yes, Doctor. Our relationships with the banks in Sri Lanka is obviously very interactive and very good at the moment. Since we've opened the rep office in Sri Lanka in February 2018, we've seen a marked increase in the exposures that we take on Sri Lankan banks. So there's a huge appetite, well, not huge, but since the COVID issues, there has been a bit of downgrade of the country that influenced the risk appetite. But we've seen that with the growth of the economy post-COVID, that there will be a huge interaction between Sri Lanka and Doha Bank, and for Qatar as such. What we can obviously offer to the Sri Lankan banks here in Qatar is their point of entry into this market, not just in Qatar, but also a wider market in the GCC region. With our branches that we have in Kuwait, the UAE, and India, obviously, we can facilitate their clients' trade business in the local markets. We can issue their letters of credit. We can confirm the letters of credit. We can finance those letters of credit, obviously. And we can issue their bid bonds and all kinds of guarantees that they would have, that they would need to enter into the market or to participate in projects here in Qatar. As previously indicated, we also have a very large remittance business between Sri Lanka and Qatar, and we have ties up with a few of the local banks. So we facilitate the remittances of the Sri Lankan workers in Qatar towards Sri Lanka, obviously. And so there's a lot of scope in that particular area as well. So there's a lot of synergies, and there's a lot of opportunities that we can interact with the Sri Lankan banks. So we welcome them to approach us, to approach Iranda, obviously, in the rep office to make that connection, but also to visit our website. All our contact details are on our website, and they can also see the products and the services that we offer to them via the website, or they can contact us here directly at head office or through our regional offices here.
Okay. Very good, very good. Okay, it's a fine piece of connectivity we see in terms of trade or investments. Now let me move on to Mr. Sanjay Mohotala, Director General, Board of Investment, Sri Lanka. And a lot of investment opportunities, how we can add value. Let us look at where we can invest, what are the growing opportunities. Over to Mr. Sanjay.
Thanks, Dr. Sitaraman. Good afternoon, good morning to everyone. I'm going to share the presentation on my screen. Look, I think there were a lot of things that was touched upon about how Sri Lanka has recovered through the COVID crisis and the opportunities you see in terms of investment opportunities and export opportunities. Let me take you through quickly some reasons why an investor should think of Sri Lanka. Before I start, I think a couple of questions that came up was, well, what is the policy outlook? Is this a stable government? What are we going through? Is this the right time to invest in Sri Lanka? So if I step back and address those couple of those questions before I get into the details, indeed, it's a strong mandate that is given by the people, both at the presidential and the recently concluded parliament election, to drive down the reforms. And if you look at the business confidence and what we have seen, the reactions from the foreign governments, there's quite a bit of expectation in terms of government sticking to the policy and the reform agenda and continuing with the reforms. Secondly, Sri Lanka as a country is going through an interesting period, which is around 4,000 per capita to about 6,000 per capita GDP. Those are formative years of a country, because if you get the policies right at this time, you'll see a much more rapid growth. So that means for investors, if you come in right and getting exposed to the right sectors, you'll see a rapid growth, and you can benefit from the tailwinds that you're going to get. Thirdly, I think policy point of view, to achieve a 6 to 7% GDP growth over a 5 to 10 years. So I could deem this as a growth decade, which will pretty much almost double our GDP over a 10-year horizon and get to around 6,500 in about 2025. So let me just quickly run through why Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a destination where 1,200 odd foreign companies have made home. We have attracted close to about $7 billion, give or take, from 2014, 2018. And if you just take this year, even amidst COVID, we have approved investments close to about $1.4 billion. And this is without counting in any investments that is coming into the port city. So this is for expansion of existing businesses in the country, and also the investors coming and placing trust in Sri Lanka. So we are a global hub in terms of whether it is the hotel chains, the global hotel chains making Sri Lanka as a destination, whether it's technology or telecom companies, Fortune 500 companies being here, or even be known as the tire capital of the world for solid tires. In terms of why would people look at Sri Lanka and want to invest in, I think the first and fundamental thing is our talent pool. And this is underpinned by our state and private universities, the number of quality graduates which are coming out, and also the training association with the BTech for vocational training that is in place. Now, I think these are the numbers that you see today. But if you think about our targets and our vision, we need to double and triple these number of graduates who are coming in to be able to facilitate and support an ICT sector or the new industry verticals that we are promoting, which I will come back to later. And BTech, we need to at least increase by 1.5 times. Not just new graduates, but also reskilling needed for our country and these new verticals to go through. So education, while the talent pool will continue to be rich, we will also be looking at quite a bit of investments into this field, where some of the investors who are on this call could play a role. In terms of ease of doing business, unfortunately, we have not ranked quite high, but if you look at the South Asia region, we are number 2. But fundamental reason for not ranking high is some of the red tape and some of the procedural things that you see when it comes to dealing with the government institutions or in terms of the country. But as a BOI, being the apex agency to facilitate investments, we help the investors to cut across those red tape. So I would say not look at the numbers of ease of doing business, but rather talk to your fellow investors who have invested with us and the facilitation that the BOI has provided to you all. And in that regard, we will roll out the red carpet for the investors to make sure that your investment process in Sri Lanka is as seamless and as least painful as possible compared to any other places that you have done business with. And in terms of the competitiveness and the productivity, so you have a talented labor pool, and then you also have a productive and cost-efficient labor pool. So this marriage attracts quite a bit of investment, whether it is kind of where labor-intensive like apparel, or whether it is high-end of manufacturing where EEC, and we will take all required efforts to keep this productivity at a competitive level. both in terms of the salary point of view, in terms of the labor law point of view, in terms of the upskilling of the skill point of view. I think we touched upon, and there was a question raised about in terms of the bilateral and trade treaties that we have. Yes, indeed, we have quite a few good treaties which allows a company in Sri Lanka to trade with South Asia, Asian countries with ease, with over 6,000 or 5,000 to 6,000 lines of HS codes being open. But in addition, there are at least 4 to 5 bilateral trade agreements that's being discussed, mainly on access to Europe, UK, US, China, Japan, and also, as we discussed, this is also a region that we need to think about how we get better trade terms and access. In terms for an investor, one of the questions always get asked is, how is the tax rate in the country? What Sri Lanka has done is, if you look at any other country in the region, we have the lowest concessionary tax rate for companies who are based in Sri Lanka and, of course, invest out. But having said that, if the investment is sizable, that means in terms of the quantum of investment or how it changes the fabric of Sri Lanka's investment climate, we do have the authority to look at on a case-by-case basis and provide additional investment or additional certain amount of tax breaks beyond what I have mentioned here. So in terms of your investment protection, in terms of return point of view, Sri Lanka definitely provides a good opportunity. One of the other things that we often talk about is the kind of the quality of life and the infrastructure that Sri Lanka offers in terms of investment destination. In South Asia, we rank much higher in the quality of life index compared to our peers. And also in terms of the infrastructure, we have 3 international airports functioning. We are in discussions in expanding that number of seaports. We have 2 large seaports with a lot of expansion opportunities and investment opportunities. Colombo being at capacity and looking at building 2 new terminals. Hambantota now have become one of the largest vehicle exchanges in the region. And of course, there is a lot of infrastructure being developed both on the roadside and light rail segments, and also driving requirement for the power sector. So there's quite a bit of opportunities for investing power plants and so on and so forth. In addition, like I think Chitranjali also touched on this, just like Doha is in the middle of connecting Europe and Asia, Sri Lanka provides similar connectivity, just like what Singapore will do for the South Asia, East African markets, as well as Europe. One is being at the crossroad of major shipping lines, having a vibrant tourism industry and connecting to multiple destinations directly in Europe, US, in East Asia, and especially like places like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, having direct both air and sea connectivity. So it provides you a good, rapid connectivity if you are an investor in Sri Lanka. Now, let's look a little bit forward in terms of what is BOI is working on to further sweeten or improve the investor climate that what we see in the country. I think the most important thing that you all look at is like what action is BOI taking to create a compelling investment climate in the coming years. So if I think about the investor climate creation, there are 4 buckets that I look at. One is on the market environment. So here we're talking about strategic trust. This is about having a consistent investment policies for a prolonged period so that the investors have some sort of a guarantee that their investments are protected and their returns can be realized at what they come in, versus what we see as an unfortunate thing in this part of the world, in South Asia, where the policies change with the government changes. And also empowering within the BOI Act, where any company comes in can get that guarantee through the BOI, the powers vested in the BOI. And in terms of the fair and attractive business environment, we talked about the FTAs we talked about, right? And the other is further truly becoming the one-stop shop for the investors when they come in and invest in the country. Just pause. Can you all hear me clearly, or is there any disturbance?
Yeah.
Sorry?
We could hear you. Perfect.
Good. So the other one is like introducing digitization so that the business processes and the cumbersome documentations that can be minimized and streamlined. And we talked about a lot about the investment diversification. I'll just come that a little bit later. The labor force, I touched on a little bit broadly, which is about getting and expanding the skill base, which is getting the right investments in the universities, vocational training, and also having mechanisms to upskill the workers that we have. So we are looking at ways of establishing a fund where we can support some of the investors or the companies working in Sri Lanka, whereby this fund will bear some of the upskilling or the reskilling skill expenditure that is needed to continue to keep the workforce at cutting edge, and also have a mechanism to whereby you could bring in the foreign talent without including the local talent pool where required, especially when we are having a thrust around high-tech verticals. So higher labor participation, that is part and parcel of our overall strategy in terms of where we are building our new zones. We are concentrated around Colombo, but moving away from that into the outskirts. A couple of other things, I'm not going into the details, but one of the things every investor looks in is to have a lead when this that can so that also gets in the budget trying to introduce certain incentive structures which will be regional investments and Sri Lanka to be on top of that. So if you, and I think we're the most important and maybe most interested, what are the sectors that we are basically looking at? Manufacturing, ICT, tourism, agriculture.
Okay. We have a disruption in the audio. Yeah. Yeah, Sanjay, we have a disruption in the audio from your side. Iranda, you could hear me?
Yes, we can hear. I think Sanjay will join soon. I will connect him.
Okay. Meanwhile, I think.
Please.
I think we have a bigger opportunity when I met the previous finance minister and even the previous president when we came for the inauguration. We looked at various options in terms of collaborations and investment partnership and joint ventures between Qatar and Sri Lanka. We are going to explore that option, and the Sri Lankan mission is looking for the new posting of the ambassador as such. So, Iranda, if you can gather the information where there are opportunities where Qatari institutional investors or Qatar government can invest, please let us know. So work with Mr. Sanjay and then come with the proposals so that we can look at options where exactly we can converge in terms of overall contribution. Now, I am losing.
Sanjay connected. Sanjay, are you there? I think some line disconnection. I think.
Move on to my presentation because in view of time, I want to finish it off. Again, if Sanjay is connected, we'll come back. Okay?
Yes.
Are you sure Sanjay is not getting connected? Can I move on to my presentation? That's the final presentation from my side. It's going to be short. But Qatar, you're not seeing Qatar. I have to show to various Sri Lankan viewers and rest of the globe. So I have a few clips to show. Let me move on to my presentation. Meanwhile, we'll put on Sanjay. And once he's back, my administrators will take care of the rest. Right. Let me show you what Qatar is all about in a minute. Global economies, we talked about it. We have 23 million people under stress, and we have seen over 800,000 people we lost. Qatar's managed well. We have nearly 600,000 people we have tested. We have 194 people we lost. Nevertheless, still we have around 3,000 people still under treatment. We will make sure that our healthcare system is second to none. And overall, if you look at the bigger picture, Qatar has managed well in terms of healthcare. And looking at the other risk management, we'll show you the financial stability. We will show you the Qatar economy. We'll also look at the bilateral opportunities. Now, Qatar as a country.
Located on the region's busiest shipping route, Qatar is perfectly positioned for international trade, with direct air and sea connections to Asia, Africa, and Europe. Qatar is becoming a leading destination for next-generation business models. Its thriving, knowledge-based economy has helped secure its place among the most competitive business environments in the world, an ideal destination for foreign investment. The past 4 decades have seen a 9-fold increase in Qatar's population to 2.7 million. The current political blockade by neighboring countries has only served to strengthen the nation's self-sufficiency, and strategic investment continues to accelerate. Qatar has already spent $33 billion on infrastructure projects, with new contracts to be awarded over the next 3 years, not least with the 2022 FIFA World Cup on the horizon. The national strategy, Vision 2030, is even more ambitious. Qatar is known as the world's leading supplier of liquefied natural gas and a leading player in aviation and sports and the media.
So in terms of overall financial stability, we are producing and nearing $200 billion. Essentially, this year there's going to be a contraction of 4.7%. There will be a marginal current account deficit as well as fiscal deficit. We have reserves worth of over $380 billion. That's twice the GDP is our reserves, which includes central bank cash and gold, plus external assets in multiple markets, multiple sectors. Central Bank has taken a lot of initiatives. I'm not going to detail for want of time. Over $20.5 billion has been promulgated to support the COVID recovery from this. We have managed it well in terms of direct as well as indirect support to business houses. We have moved from disaster recovery to business continuity. Qatar Development Bank has been supporting small and medium-sized entrepreneurs. And there are guidelines issued by Qatar Central Bank. I'm not going to detail.
But as I mentioned,
is an area where you have to look at.
We are full steam ahead. We are, as we have mentioned in the past, we're going to be awarding all our contracts for Northfield expansion project. We have 2 phases, the east and the south expansion. We're going to go from 77 million tons per annum to 110 million tons per annum by 2025, and then up from 110 to 126 by the year 2027. We've ordered all the shipping requirements, and we've booked slots for about $20 billion. We've announced just a couple of weeks ago, and that's at the cost of around $20 billion US, and we've booked up 60% of the entire world's capacity of building LNG ships. So these, we call them our moving pipelines, if you will, but that's to have our full supply chain up and ready by the time we have all the developments in place.
So we are going to move nearly, in 2 phases, 77 to 110 by 2025, 127 again by 2027. That's equivalent to 6 million barrels of oil. Oil, gas, and petrochemicals is what Qatar is producing. That's huge, with the energy security required in emerging markets. So it is captive in terms of consumption as well as production and distribution. So it is very strong economic fundamentals in terms of hydrocarbon. Non-hydrocarbon, we are growing at between 5 to 7% pre-COVID. I think similar reflection will come. Now, to start with 2022, stadiums, FIFA stadiums, we are modernizing the infrastructure, airport, seaport, road, rail. Look at a glimpse of the FIFA stadiums. these are engineering marvels. Beautiful stadiums have been designed to deliver state of the art, and it's going to be fun. We welcome all of you to come to 2022 game show. And in terms of business, we are building the free zones. The economic zones are well set. Look at the glimpse.
Authority is establishing a cluster of free zones, including Ras Bafuntas, located beside Hamad International Airport, the best airport in the Middle East, and Al Hul, with direct access to Hamad Port, the world's biggest greenfield port development. Qatar free zones offer foreign investors 100% ownership, zero customs duty and corporation tax, no individual income tax, quick building permits, and access to a skilled workforce. On the ground, free zones also provide fully serviced plots, dedicated security, hotel and retail facilities, as well as advanced broadband to ensure optimal connectivity. While Qatar welcomes investment in any sector, exciting opportunities already exist in logistics, e-commerce, food packaging, pharmaceuticals, and plastics. With an eye to the future, we're also focused on disruptive industries, such as renewable energy, power storage solutions, and artificial intelligence. Be part of the Qatar Free Zones initiative, with everything in place, from essential infrastructure and facilities to ease of shipping and customs. Your business can flourish as a truly global player in partnership with the Qatar Free Zones Authority.
Okay, business we are here to support. Investments we are here to support. Investments we have programs, and Qatar, as I said, Qatar Investment Authority is looking at options. We will manifest when Sanjay and our Chief Representative, Mr. Iranda, get together and see the possibilities where all we can come to collaborations, and we'll introduce the right kind of partnership here and see whether we can have investment partnership of joint venture, private capacity as well as public-private partnership model we can create. We'll explore the possibilities. Sri Lanka is obviously it's such a beautiful country, airport, seaport, all well laid out, very strategic. We have to explore further strengthening in terms of investments. We'll coordinate and do the rest. Now, investments framework is already financial results. When it comes to Atul, how can we support Sri Lankan companies? Already we have very many Sri Lankan companies in our small and medium-sized entrepreneurs. So, can you explain to the viewers?
Doha Bank being the front runner in financing of SMEs, we offer all business solutions, like we have all funded-based credit facilities. We, in fact, cover the entire working capital cycle of the company, right from the purchase of material to the selling of realization of receivables through our receivable financing. And we have financing the overhead of the company through our overdraft facility. And apart from fund-based facilities, we have non-fund facilities, like we provide letter of credits and guarantees. And not only we focus on the services which are like cash management services, we have payroll solutions, we have our dedicated 100% owned risk insurance we coverage through our back company. And then we have, apart from this, we are a partner bank with the Qatar Development Bank, where we offer 85% credit guarantee program, which is really a great program. Gives advantage to the startups as they have a liberal repayment period up to 10 years, and then we have a 2 years holiday period in that, and the pricing is fantastic. So these are the on credit support we can support the SMEs. Apart from this, I feel there's a lot of opportunities in Qatar. One in EDB presentation, I saw the core area they wanted to focus on the IT sector. I think this is an area where they can really work in Qatar. I have seen digitization in government sector as well as the banking industry is doing very good in Qatar. But on the private sector, I think still there's a good scope of digitization. I think this is the area I think they can focus. And from Doha Bank, I think whatever they need any support for this, we are ready to help.
Wonderful. That's the essence of it. We are looking forward for using Qatar as a gateway for global purpose. And we can bring in your cost-effective labor. You have the know-how. We can get the equity from certain pockets, and debt will come through Doha Bank on its own, or even through investment partnership with Qatar Development Bank, Al Damin program, which just now we showcased and Atul has just mentioned. So debt or equity, we will finance. You have access to finance.
Hi, Dr. Sitaram. I'm back on.
You're back on. Okay, let me complete. Okay, I'm going to get back to you in another 5 minutes. Let me show you some of the glimpses. Okay, then Sri Lanka, I'm going to we have covered extensively. Now, the bilateral partnership, I want to show you some pictures. And His Highness Emir was there in March 2015. Again, the Finance Minister of Sri Lanka was here in July 2017. And the Commerce Minister met the then Prime Minister of Sri Lanka. And we had, again, Sri Lankan previous president was here. We hosted him in October 2017. And we also had Chamber of Commerce meeting with him. It was a very good meeting. We resolved many things. And and I had the privilege of So these are the developments. The previous finance minister came for our inauguration. Previous central bank governor came for our inauguration in June 2018. And we had a wonderful, and again, I hosted him in September here in the bank. Twice or thrice we hosted this central bank governors here, even the president and the foreign minister and the deputy prime minister met the speaker in 2000.
Qatar's Minister of Energy Saad Sharida Al-Kabi met with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa earlier today at the Presidential Secretariat and iterated the willingness of the government of Qatar to help Sri Lanka begin the production of renewable energy. Minister Al-Kabi requested that the President appoint a representative of Sri Lanka to look into the matters pertaining to renewable energy production and also congratulated the President on his victory at last year's presidential election. During the meeting, President Rajapaksa nominated Secretary to the President P.B. Jayasundara as the country's representative on the issue. In order to explore methods of implementation of the proposal, the Minister of Qatar Saad Sharida Al-Kabi invited the Secretary to the President to visit the city of Doha in Qatar. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa said that Sri Lanka is willing to expand bilateral cooperation between the two countries and said that Sri Lanka is in need of extending its market for exports such as tea, both organic and non-organic vegetables and fruits. Expressing optimism over the discussions, the Qatari minister stated that it was the first step in furthering cooperation between the two countries.
So that's where it stands. And FinTech Hub we are creating and bilateral relationship is moving. Let me ask now, Sanjay, your technology is shaping. Okay, over to you, Ms. Sanjay. You can conclude the session and then we can say bye to viewers. Sanjay. You can, yeah.
Sanjay, you're mute.
Yep, you could hear me and clearly, right? So in terms of the growth thrust, we are looking at 5 sectors for the coming years, mainly manufacturer, ICT, hospitality, agriculture, and construction infrastructure. In the manufacturing segment, we are looking at few targeted segments: pharmaceutical, High value added apparel, that means our apparel sector does not produce its yarn and the fabrics in the country. Electronics and electrical, given that we have a nucleus industry already, how do you expand it? Of course, ICT, I think there was many discussions across the panel in terms of ICT. I guess ICT is perhaps one of the hidden gems of this country, or where we have not really talked about, because if you look at many airlines run on systems developed by us. The London Stock Exchange runs on end-to-end solutions developed in our country. So is many theme parks and cruise ships and so on and so forth. So in terms of the innovation, it's an island of ingenuity, but it's not much spoken about. So ICT technically is a growth thrust. On the hospital and tourism side, there's been quite a bit of investments from international players, and I talked about how many of the large global hotel chains are here. But I think going beyond that, in terms of taking advantage of our fauna and flora, thinking about adventure tourism, thrill seeking, and also medical tourism, which we haven't explored in the past. Agriculture and food processing, this is in line with what the President's vision as well. For example, sectors like rubber, which is about a $1 billion export, can be easily doubled given the amount of plantation land we have, and we just need to make sure that our yields are kept up. And also for agri-processing, just like what Chitran really mentioned, not just spices, but all the fruits and vegetables which are unique to Sri Lanka and has quite a bit of medicinal properties. If you look at our Ayurveda, that's what's come through, and of course fisheries, which haven't touched, given that this country has a large economic zone, a maritime economic zone. And of course, when it comes to construction infrastructure, there's quite a bit of being developments need to come in, and I'll talk about it a bit later in terms of some specific opportunities. If I just run very quickly, I'm going to give you a gist of some of the opportunities that's coming through. One is on textile manufacture. We are in the process of building this zone in Batiklo. It's going to be up and running as early as January next year, and we already have 5 to 6 investors who have committed. So this is predominantly for textile manufacturing, both plant-based as well as synthetic. Second part of it is Hambantota, which is a pharmaceutical zone, which is going to be developed in 2 stages with a global pharmaceutical zone designer. The plan is twofold. One is to have some sort of an import substitution for the pharmaceuticals being consumed in Sri Lanka, being one of the countries who consumes the most amount of pharmaceuticals in this part of the world, and also creating a $1 billion vertical and have a pathway by 2025. Of course, these pharmaceutical companies will take some time to invest and get the certification that's needed to export, but we are looking at global players to come and invest, and we have quite a few interest from European players already. Then to take advantage of the rubber opportunity, we are planning to build a dedicated rubber zone where we will double the current export volumes for rubber, and also in line with the employment and all that. And IT, we talked about it. So the key question is, how do we tap the talent pools beyond what we have within Colombo and just outside Colombo? So that means we're taking it to Kandy, Jaffna, and Kampaha. Just to let you know, like when HCL came here and when they start doing the aptitude test, they found the Sri Lankan talent pool to be much better equipped to the kind of the work that they're trying to do versus this part of the world. So from 500 people headcount, now they're talking about a 5,000 people campus that we're trying to build in the next 3 years. So was agri-processing, aquaculture. I can go into much more detail, and in time I'm just going to skip through. One of the other things that Sri Lanka offers is one of a lifetime opportunity in terms of the port city which is being built. Already we have the land acreage being reclaimed, the tree planting, the infrastructure is being developed. We have come a long way in that, and the first investment has already gone on the ground, and there are almost about 13 plots which have been RFP'd out right now. This has mixed developments, entertainment, office buildings, and also residential component along with conventional centers and so on and so forth. So this is kind of what the zonal map would look like. This would provide ample opportunities, just like what the large real estate players have done in Qatar, in Doha. They could come and revitalize and reimagine our city as well. So this is an open invitation to everyone. I think just to conclude, there are multiple opportunities across these 5 verticals that we are trying to push in terms of investment and help our country achieve our vision for the next 5 years, as well as your investors achieve the returns that you seek in this part of the world. So I'll conclude from that. If there's any questions, please do come back to me. I'm happy to either me or my team will furnish the answers that you're looking for.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Sanjay Mahotwala, Director General Board of Investment of Sri Lanka. Many questions have come, Sanjay, actually. They asked for contact details. We'll definitely share the contact details, one question. Second, on the insurance side, they want collaborations, and we'll explore the opportunities. Even Doha Bank has got 100% subsidy. We can see where we can converge on the insurance side. We can collaborate.
Indeed.
Another question, you don't need to answer all the questions, but I'm just leaving the questions to you. How would Sri Lanka mitigate the opportunity lost from leasing their land to China for free? How can Sri Lanka find other channels to increase the income for its nations? That's another question. So social media is wide open to throw questions. So plenty of questions have come, but where I see the opportunity, I tell you, on the airport side, the code sharing agreement already going on. We can look at opportunities to collaborate, Qatar Airways and Sri Lankan Airways. Similarly, Milaha, the shipping company in Qatar, has got huge expertise in terms of diversification distribution strategy. We can look at port, what a strategic geography it is. So Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, and Arabian Sea. So you have a bigger advantage to collaborate on this seaport. That's where the investment partnership we can explore. On the food security side, we can explore the opportunities. On the banking side, we will continue to explore. So we will work out the details, specifics. If we'll invite you to Qatar and you do a presentation to ultra net worth individuals as well as institutions here, we can together present the Sri Lankan opportunities to the market so that we can create a win-win model, Mr. Sanjay. With these words, I have to conclude for want of time because already we have slightly over the budgeted time. I want to invite Iranda to say a word of thanks to conclude the event.
Thank you, Doctor. We would like to thank Dr. Chandrana Tamrasekara, Dr. Asim, Mr. Sanjay Mahotwala, and Mrs. Chitranjali Dissanayake for speaking and sharing their insight with the audience at this event. And most importantly, let me extend my heartiest gratitude for the audience for dialing in for this webinar. We hope we had a very good session, and Doha Bank will continue to extend our support to Sri Lanka. We wish you everyone take good care, stay safe and healthy during this difficult period. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Madam Chitranjali. And
thank you.
Thank you. We look forward. Thank you, Iranda.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Iranda.